Hello and welcome to Crossing the Line. If you enjoy thrilling stories, subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to always be the first to watch our new videos.
I sat on the swing in a silent park, watching a spider weave its web with hypnotic precision. The sun was still a few minutes away from breaking the horizon, and the crisp morning air enveloped the place. This tiny architect had chosen a strategic spot, the underside of the children's slide in the community park. It moved back and forth with agility between the slide's anchor points, creating a structure nearly 4 inches tall and 18 inches wide. Each thread seemed to be part of an intricate masterpiece, a marvel of natural engineering built in a single night. It was impossible not to admire its dedication. I thought about how amazing it is what one can achieve by simply ignoring distractions, like those people who only see numbers and spreadsheets instead of the creative potential of a project. The spider had a clear plan, simple yet effective. It just needed to work once to turn an entire night's effort into a meal fit for a king. Of course, its plan wasn't without risks. The first child who decided to go down the slide would likely destroy its masterpiece in seconds. But there was the lesson. The spider didn't worry about what could go wrong. It moved forward with determination, understanding that in life, there is no reward without risk. "I'm rooting for you, little friend," I murmured to myself, feeling a strange connection to its struggle. I had a plan too. Perhaps just as absurd as its plan, but just as important. Only the spiders and crickets bore witness to my words. It was Monday, the first day of my plan. If everything went well, soon the final domino would fall into place. My name is Blake Foley. I married Liam shortly after we graduated from the University of Michigan. We both found ordinary jobs in the suburbs of Detroit. Our past isn't special. We were the typical college students who, after a few mistakes, experiments, and separate paths, found a way back to each other. What brought us to this point isn't extraordinary, but what we're about to do will be. The days of the ordinary are numbered. And this is our story. I'm naturally insecure, and that insecurity often drags me into the territory of jealousy. I won't sugarcoat this. I can be a real jerk to Liam. If I don't like how she dresses or acts in public, I don't just think it, I say it. Unfiltered criticism, sometimes even in front of others. It's not fair, I know. But it's not like she doesn't understand where all this comes from. We've had long, endless conversations about actions and consequences. About what it means to love each other despite imperfections, because I have many. And yet, Liam agreed to marry me. No doubts, no hesitation. She did it with a determination I don't deserve but treasure. One of the things that binds us is our shared passion for firearms. Liam and I are avid shooters. We've taken every course you can imagine, from the NRA's basic course to advanced defensive pistol training. We even got our concealed carry permits. We compete in shooting tournaments at the indoor range. Liam doesn't just participate, she excels. She's won the Aniakli Award for Best Female Shooter more than once. She's a champion, both literally and figuratively. I, on the other hand, am competent, but I'll never be at her level. And that's okay. Knowing she's so skilled gives me a special kind of peace, especially here in the Detroit suburbs. While most areas are safe, there are some where sleeping a little more soundly is a feat, but knowing she's armed and trained, it's as if safety is always by our side. Our life isn't just training and gunpowder. We still attend many University of Michigan games: football, basketball, and baseball. I played all 3 sports in high school, but when I got to college, I realized I didn't have the talent to compete at that level. I focused on my studies, leaving sports as a distant memory. This past Thursday, the day seemed eternal. The hours dragged on at a turtle's pace, and all I wanted was to get home. I was in my office, staring at a boring report, when a loud bang snapped me out of my lethargy. It was Greg, my coworker, who had slammed his fist on his desk. "How do you know that, Greg?" I asked, swiveling my chair toward him. "I'm looking at traffic cameras at the intersection of highways 7 and 82. There's a flipped truck and an overturned car. No way that's clearing up tonight." He leaned toward his screen and added, "You should see this." Intrigued, I walked from my cubicle to his and stopped in front of his laptop. On the live feed from the traffic camera, my stomach churned. Next to the paramedics, standing with a bandage around their head, was a figure eerily familiar to me. "It's Liam," I whispered to myself, as if saying it aloud would make it more real. I couldn't be completely sure, but the tattoo on the left arm was unmistakable, stretching from the shoulder to the wrist like a map of her life. The traffic camera images were small, grainy, but my heart already knew the truth. Time seemed to freeze as I stared at that screen. My mind raced with questions and fears, but one thought persisted: what the hell had happened? Apparently, Liam's flight to Chicago left without her yesterday. I couldn't get the image of that overturned truck I saw in the video out of my mind. There was something oddly familiar about it, but my brain couldn't associate a name with that image. "Can you capture those images before the camera switches?" I asked Greg, my voice barely a whisper, heavy with tension. "Sure. Actually, I'm already saving the video from the moment I saw it," he replied, his fingers typing rapidly on his laptop. Shortly after, Greg emailed me the video. I hurried to open it, eager to examine every detail. I zoomed in on a specific frame, and my heart nearly stopped. I was almost sure that was Liam. Last night's phone call? Now, the whole conversation seemed like a complete lie. "Uneventful flight, nice hotel room, meetings went well, I miss you, tomorrow will be busy, late flight, don't wait up for me." Those words echoed in my head like a hollow refrain. I had been distracted on my way home, but now I felt like a complete fool for believing it all without question. That truck kept haunting my mind. I knew it, I was certain, but I couldn't place where from. I mentally went over every person who could be connected to it. Friends, family, neighbors, but nothing fit. The blue and yellow stripes on the truck were like a puzzle tormenting me. Then came the call from Liam. I recognized her tone, sweet as always, the one that used to calm me but now only stoked my rage. "Hi, honey, bad news. The taxi to the airport got into an accident. I'm fine, but I got a cut on my forehead. Long story short, I missed my flight. I'll let you know when I find out more. Love you, call me." The words flowed from her with an alarming ease, like she was reading from a well-rehearsed script. My heart hadn't stopped pounding since I saw that photo, but now it felt different. Complete betrayal rose in my chest like a blazing fire, and it seemed my head was about to explode. I tried to calm down, even forcing myself to eat something, but I couldn't. The emotions swirling inside me were consuming me. Suddenly, realization hit me like a heavy slab. My marriage was a farce. Anger filled me. I wanted revenge, not just against Liam, but also against her lover, that still unknown figure lurking in the shadows of my life. I spent the next few hours pacing around the house, searching for something, anything, that could confirm my suspicions. I opened drawers, rummaged through closets, but without knowing exactly what I was looking for, it was all useless and frustrating. The fury inside me fueled my determination, but each failed search only deepened my despair. Finally, we decided to check our credit card statements. Liam traveled at least twice a month, so I figured there might be a mistake, a clue that could expose her double life. And in a way, I was right. Cross-referencing her trips with her credit card activity, I noticed something curious. About once every 2 months, one of her trips had no recorded expenses. Nothing except a single charge for parking at the airport. The rest, tickets, hotels, transportation, was all covered by her corporate credit card. This meant someone else was paying for those trips. Who? Why? Every new detail fed a cold, calculated anger. It wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the lies she had carefully constructed around me. Now I knew I was in a game I hadn't asked to play but was determined to win. Was I supposed to believe Liam paid in cash during those trips? Or that she simply didn't eat or spend anything at all? Of course not. What I saw on the traffic camera made it clear what was really happening. She was indulging in a 2-day sexual feast under the guise of a work trip. The priority was obvious now, to find out who she was betraying me with. I decided to take immediate action. I would request a copy of the traffic accident report. Meanwhile, I remembered the filing cabinet where Liam kept her important documents. Knowing her obsession with order, I guessed her expense reports might be there. I wasn't wrong. It took me only a few minutes to locate the right folder and another minute to confirm what I suspected. The trips with no credit card activity weren't reported in her expense accounts. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Part of me wanted to drown myself in alcohol to forget, but I knew that wasn't the right choice. My mind was clear on one thing. The magnitude of her betrayal wasn't about how long it had been happening, but about how calculated and cold her deception was. There was no point in losing myself in alcohol when I was preparing my counterattack. My revenge wouldn't be impulsive or careless. It would be as elaborate as her betrayal. Divorce would be my battlefield, and I'd ensure she got exactly what she deserved. Would it be fair? I had no other choice. Sure, she'd cling to that prenuptial agreement of 50% for each. Dream on. She'd get her share, but not the way she imagined. That night, sleep came slowly, as if my mind resisted disconnecting from the storm of thoughts. By morning, even coffee seemed incapable of jump-starting me. When I turned on my phone, I found a message from Liam. "I'll be home later." I didn't reply. I decided that today, I wouldn't make any effort to communicate with her. Instead, I spent the morning searching for divorce advice online and organizing an inventory of our joint accounts. I'd need to open an account in my name only. The brokerage account would be a bit trickier, but I already had a plan. I decided to sell enough to reach that magic 50%. When the time was right, I'd transfer my share. The house, on the other hand, was practically underwater, so there was no urgency to act there. I knew any misstep could delay my intentions. That's why I decided not to talk to anyone, friends, family, or co-workers, about the impending divorce. It was better to keep my cards close to my chest until I was ready to play them. During lunch, I obtained the copy of the police report on the accident. And there it was. Her name, clearly listed as the injured passenger in the truck. There was no doubt. The truck owner's name, Ray Estranzo, didn't sound familiar, but something kept nagging at me. Why did that truck seem so familiar? I decided to dig deeper. The report included Ray Estranzo's address, which turned out to be just 3 blocks from our house. A quick online search revealed the property deed. The truck belonged to Ray Estranzo and a woman named Gil Estranzo. I assumed she was his wife. Digging a bit further, I found details about Ray and Gil. Both had attended the same high school as Liam. And there was the connection, their shared past. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit, but my rage grew with every new revelation. Now I knew where her lover lived and who she had been spending those business trip days with. The stage was set. What remained to be decided was how to play my cards so that Liam felt the weight of each one of her lies. When Liam called around quitting time, I decided it would be better to answer. If I didn't, she might sense something was wrong, and I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. "Are you back?"
I've been trying to call you since last night.
My voice sounded more controlled than I expected. "Everything's fine. I'm surviving." Her tone was casual, but the underlying tension was unmistakable. "I found my phone turned off this morning and then again around lunchtime. I guess I should get it checked." Liam let out a nervous laugh. "How was your trip?"
It went well, until the taxi ride.
She paused, as if waiting for a reaction from me.
I will have to put on makeup to cover this cut on my forehead.
My jaw tightened upon hearing that. How could she lie with such ease?
Are you taking a girl to dinner tonight?
"Are you taking a girl to dinner tonight?" she asked with a hint of flirtation. "Sure, somewhere light." "I'm not very hungry," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Pick a place, you'll meet me there." Instead of heading straight to the restaurant, I took the longer route, passing by the Estranzo residence. Upon arrival, I noticed that the truck wasn't outside, but something caught my attention, a flag flying on the porch. It was from the University of Michigan. And then everything clicked. The truck with blue and yellow stripes. I had seen it hundreds of times when we went to the football games in Ann Arbor. The Estranzos always parked in the same spot as we did. Back then, I simply assumed they were friendly, sharing the same enthusiasm for the games. Now I realized those coincidences had been something much darker. At dinner, I did my best to act normally, but Liam noticed that something was wrong.
Is there something bothering you, Blake? You seem really distracted tonight.
A lot on my mind, I replied, almost in a whisper. But don't let it bother you. I tried to steer the conversation away, but her gaze stayed fixed on me, evaluating me. That night, when Liam started her makeup removal ritual, I pretended to be asleep. I felt her slip into bed, naked, trying to cuddle up to me. She even tried to initiate something more, but when she saw my indifference, she gave up. In the morning, she was still sound asleep when I left early for work. On impulse, I checked her car. Between the cushions of the back seat, I found what I never thought I would find, a hidden cell phone. When I turned it on and checked the messages, my world completely collapsed. The messages between Liam and Dave not only confirmed the affair, but made it clear that this hadn't been going on for weeks, but for months, maybe more. One of the messages in particular drove me to the edge of madness. Well, kids, I'm not sure what their punishment will be, but there will be a price to pay. That text burned in my mind like a flame. I'm not a violent man. I've never been. But the idea of betrayal, of everything that had happened behind my back, demanded more than simple patience. I needed something creative, a plan that would match Liam's calculated deception. I knew involving a lawyer so soon would be detrimental to what I had in mind. I wanted her to admit her affair without knowing that I already knew. And when that happened, I would need to act quickly to protect whatever I could. I spent the weekend avoiding Liam as much as I could. On Saturday night, she tried to get close again. She made love to me, but for me, it was mechanical, empty. I finished quickly and fell asleep, leaving a visibly frustrated Liam. I tried again on Sunday, with the same result. Finally, she gave up, and we both fell asleep in cold silence. On Monday morning, I woke up early and spent some time in the park, reflecting. I needed to be sure that this was the path I wanted to take. Every fiber of my being told me it was. That text message, the definitive proof of her betrayal, kept echoing in my mind, fueling my determination. I thought I had everything under control, until I received that phone call. Monday, the day of chaos.
Monday mornings always bring a particular frenzy with them. The calls kept coming into the office, one after the other, like an unrelenting clock. Then it happened. The phone rang, and I saw a private number on the screen. I answered automatically, my voice loaded with my usual professional tone. "This is Jauna." The voice on the other side was male, calm, but with a nasal tone that pierced my ear like an uncomfortable thorn. "I know what you're doing with Ray. I want to join in the action." Before I could respond, the line was cut off. A chill ran through me. My mind filled with a single thought. Damn, damn, damn. Who was that man? How did he know about Ray? And most of all, what did he mean by join in the action? I tried to continue my day, but my mind was in a storm. I did everything mechanically, as if my body were there but my brain was not. That night, at home, I tried to relax with the routine Blake and I shared a cup of hot tea before bed. He looked at me closely as he stirred his own tea. "It seems like something's bothering you. Are you sure you're okay?" he asked. I smiled weakly, trying to make my voice not betray my anxiety. "I'm fine, just work stuff that's got me uneasy. I need a distraction. Do you know anything that could keep a girl occupied for a while?" Blake laughed softly, and although we connected intimately that night, I felt it was more of a distraction for him than a true connection. For my part, all I could think about was that call and what it meant. A second blow. Another disturbing call. The next day, I was determined to ignore any attempt by Jauna to blackmail me. But when the phone rang again, my heart stopped when I recognized the same nasal voice. "This is Jauna. Ready to come please me." I immediately hung up, my pulse racing. Not even a minute passed before the phone rang again. "This is Jauna. They both snore at night, did you know? Last night you wore a blue teddy, slept on the right side of the bed, and you weren't wearing panties. I've got a really nice picture." The phone dropped from my hands, and a gasp escaped from my mouth before I could contain it. How did he know all of that? How was it possible that someone had been in my room without me realizing? I ran to the nearest bathroom and vomited. It felt as if shame and fear were eating me from the inside. When I left work that afternoon, I found an envelope stuck to the windshield of my car. Inside was a photograph. It was of me, lying in my bed, wearing exactly what Jauna had described. My hands shook so much that I almost dropped the photo. It felt like I had been violated, as if someone had invaded not just my privacy, but my very existence. I was filled with paranoia. That night, I tried to act as if everything was fine. While Blake paid the bills and organized the taxes, I made sure he couldn't read the fear on my face. "Blake, do you think we could put locks on the outside doors?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He frowned. "I guess so, but why?" "I just heard about recent robberies in nearby houses. I don't want anyone coming in while we're inside," he suggested and added the lock to his to-do list, but I knew my fear went beyond what a simple lock could solve. That night, every creak and every shadow kept me on edge. I slept little, and when I finally did, the nightmares didn't let me rest. The threat intensified. In the morning, the nightmare continued. My phone rang again, and his nasal voice mocked me. "This is Jauna. What a nice pair of pajamas you had last night. Ready to be my sex slave?" Helplessness overwhelmed me. My body shook as I hung up. I felt like I was on the edge of an abyss that I wouldn't be able to escape. Who was Jauna? What did he really want? And how did he know so much about me? The fear began to transform into dangerous anger. I knew I couldn't keep going like this. Something had to change. Something could be done before I completely lost control. "Who are you? What do you want?" I screamed into the phone, my voice full of fury and fear. "Do you know what I want? Have you ever tried being tied up in your place or mine?" The response was a silence heavy with tension. My blood was boiling, and with an attempt at courage, I added, "Come to my place, idiot. I'll make a hole the size of a tennis ball in your chest." The call ended without a reply. Rage turned into a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, guilt, and a growing sense of helplessness. I requested a longer lunch break than usual. 2 hours to try to pull myself together, but all I managed was to face the reflection of a woman I barely recognized. Who can I turn to? I wondered as treacherous tears slid down my face. No one knew about my relationship with Ray. Well, no one except my stalker. That night, Blake and I were together, but it wasn't what it used to be. He was there basically, but something in his gaze seemed distant. And I was lost in my own hell. That same night, while I tried to close my eyes for at least a couple of hours, Blake entered the room. "Mujer. Do you feel okay? You look exhausted. Hombre." "I think I'm getting sick," I lied, trying to avoid closeness. "I'll sleep in the guest room so I don't infect you." "Mujer." No. If you move around as much as you always do, I'll still hear you. Better stay here." "Hombre." "It's the bed," I said, looking for an excuse. "The guest bed is firmer, it will help with my back." Blake sighed, but didn't insist. Before leaving, I said something else. "I've been having nightmares lately. I'll keep my gun close just in case. Make a lot of noise before entering the room." He looked at me strangely, but nodded.
Maybe I should install a handle with a lock on this door as well. I'll put it on the to-do list.
Maybe I should install a handle with a lock on this door as well. I'll put it on the to-do list. Thank you. Good night, Blake. He responded with something that chilled my heart. Sleep well. Where were the words he used to say? When was the last time Blake ended a good night with a "I love you"? Before sleeping, I slid my gun under the pillow and placed a chair against the door. I put some trinkets on the windowsill, trusting the noise would wake me if anyone tried to enter. Then, the phone rang again. "It's Jauna," the nasal voice said with a mocking tone. "I passed by your house, but I don't see any hole in my chest. Nice trinkets, by the way." I took a few. My body froze when I heard the next sentence. "Maybe I could drug Blake and then you and I could have a lot of fun. The headboard of your bed should work well for some handcuffs." The line was cut, and I was so paralyzed I could barely breathe. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. It was impossible to deny what had happened. Jauna had been in my room. She had taken my things. That afternoon, I called Ray from a disposable phone I kept hidden in my car. "We need to calm down for now," I told him, my voice tense. He didn't take it well, and his messages made his frustration clear. Was he the one who put me in this situation? Or was it my discovery that attracted Jauna? At work, things weren't improving either. My supervisor noticed my poor performance and gave me the usual motivational speech. It had never been necessary before, and feeling the stares and hearing my coworkers' giggles was humiliating. I cried for an hour in the bathroom before returning to my desk. Friday morning tried to be productive, but Jauna's call destroyed everything. "Nice touch with the bells," she said with her annoying tone. "You worried me for a minute, but you slept deeply. Did you see I emptied your gun and put the bullets on the windowsill? I also returned your trinkets." Panic took over me. Jauna wasn't just playing with my mind. She was inside my house, violating every boundary I ever thought I had. For the first time, I seriously considered telling Blake everything. I needed help, but I feared losing him forever. And if I didn't act fast, I knew Jauna would take this game even further. The weekend couldn't come soon enough, I thought. But the only thing scarier than my work was the emptiness of the weekend, a time Jauna could use to finish destroying me. The tension in the air was palpable. I knew the bastard would come for me. He had done it before, lurking like an animal, and now, with the nightmare getting closer, I couldn't escape. My mind spun, trapped in a spiral of paranoia. Blake, deeply asleep when I finished my shower on Saturday morning, never used to sleep in late. I shook him several times, my hand trembling slightly. He woke up with a start, rubbing his eyes, still dazed from sleep. "What time is it?" he mumbled, looking around the room with a confused expression. He was completely out of it. "Almost 9, I replied, feeling the anxiety starting to build in my chest. "Do you feel okay?" Blake furrowed his brow as he rubbed his neck, a gesture he always made when something bothered him. "What the hell?" "I have a sore spot here," he said, pointing to his neck. As I got closer, I saw a suspicious mark, a bite or something similar. "Looks like something bit you," I said, my voice softer than usual. "Let me get you a bandage." The rest of the morning went by like always, between chores and conversations that tried to hide the growing tension inside me. Around noon, Blake went out to get a smoothie, and I, trapped in my own thoughts, couldn't focus on anything. Just as I was taking a sip of my drink, the sound of the phone startled me. The caller ID showed private. My mom used to hide her calls, so I didn't hesitate to answer. "Hello," I said, trying to sound normal, although the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. "I tested my tranquilizer dart on Blake last night. I see he's still alive, so I guess we're ready to move forward." I hung up without waiting for a response, and a chill ran down my spine. My body was trembling, my legs were weak. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had done. What had led me to this point? How did I get involved with him? I couldn't help but feel disgusted. My thoughts were a mess. It wasn't even that good, not even in high school. What the hell was I thinking getting involved with someone like him? Sunday didn't bring relief. Every time my phone rang, my blood pressure shot up. The fear was consuming me. When I answered a private call, his voice made me shudder. "Time's up, it's already. Next time you're alone, you'll be mine," he said, and the line was abruptly cut before I could respond. Anxiety grew inside me. My hands were sweating. My heart was pounding. Sooner or later, I'd be alone in the house. And then, what would I do? I couldn't take it much longer. The day dragged on endlessly. Every glance at the clock made me feel more trapped. I didn't want to sleep that night, but the physical and emotional exhaustion was taking over me. Just before going to bed, my mind made a complete turn. I have to go back to the office, I thought, trembling just imagining it. I can't stay here for more than 90 minutes. I can't let him find me. I don't want him to find me. Blake couldn't wait until morning. Before leaving, I checked all the doors and windows. Every one of my movements was filled with fear. I made sure everything was locked. After closing the bedroom door and activating the bells, I sat on the bed, lights on. I grabbed the gun I had hidden under the pillow. The magazine was full. I couldn't stop checking it over and over. The creaking of the floors froze me. My body instinctively reacted, pointing towards the door, towards the window. Fear overtook every fiber of my being. Then the doorbell rang, and without thinking, I shot. A groan echoed in the air. My hand trembled, and I shot again and again. Each shot was a release, but the anguish consumed me. When the door finally opened, a body dressed in black fell forward, collapsing onto the floor. None of it was possible. Reality was crumbling before me. I looked down, stunned, feeling an humiliation I couldn't control. The terror was so deep I had wet the bed. I was shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I managed to dial 911, but the voice inside me screamed that nothing would ever be the same again.
What is your emergency?
I just shot someone in my house. I have a gun pointing at the body. I'm afraid to approach. I tried to stay calm, but my words sounded shaky. I need help, please.
Ma'am, can you give me your address?
Every second felt like an eternity. As I waited, I felt the weight of fear in the air, crushing, heavy. The silence in the house was unbearable, interrupted only by my erratic breathing. I felt the cold tip of the gun's barrel in my hands, and the uncertainty of what to do overtook me. 5 minutes later, though it felt like hours, I saw the red and blue lights flashing through the windows. The first patrol car arrived. A minute later, the ambulance appeared with some paramedics, running toward the house. In 30 minutes, the place was flooded with police. Chaos had erupted, but my mind could only focus on one thing. I needed Blake. I needed to know where the demons were. In our state, the Make It Yours law was clear. If an intruder entered your home, you could do whatever was necessary to protect yourself, even kill them. If the intruder died, the case was immediately closed. But no matter what the law said, the weight of what I had done still lingered, pressing down on my chest. The paramedics worked quickly to stabilize the man. He had lost a lot of blood, but he was still alive. That meant he wasn't completely safe, but at least the immediate danger had passed.
I'm going to the office, I told Liam, my voice wavering, trying to sound normal, but knowing I wasn't. Panic still took hold of me. Once in the garage, I used latex gloves with trembling hands. I found Liam's disposable phone in his car, the same one he had used to send me messages months ago. The message I saw on the screen filled me with fury, a message that hadn't changed since the last time. The time of sending was almost exactly the same as before. The coincidence wasn't casual, but I had to move forward. I copied the message, my breathing quick and erratic, and then sent it, as part of my plan, my revenge. I returned the phone to where I had found it, walked away, and waited. The light in his room was the only one still on in the house. I just had to wait a little longer. When I finally headed toward the office, all I could hear was the echo of my own footsteps, my mind spinning with every possible scenario. I knew the security cameras were recording everything that happened, and I had to make sure nothing went wrong. I needed my access card to get through the main door. I entered the building, but stopped for a moment, staring at my computer screen. Would my plan really work? Or had I made the biggest mistake of my life? The panic was constant. Again and again, I reviewed what I had done, what I was about to do. I bought a disposable phone, downloaded a voice modification app, and prepared for the worst. The first night at home, I could see the panic reflected on her face. Every night, I mixed a sedative in her bath to make sure she fell into a deep sleep. I made sure she couldn't hear me or wake up. As the nights passed, the routine became more sinister. The first time I repositioned her to take a good photo, I made sure she was completely unconscious, completely vulnerable. I printed the photo on our printer, a physical reminder of what I was about to do. The following nights were more of the same, and the anxiety I felt every time she fell asleep became a constant. Every time she drifted into a deep sleep, I knew I could move, make noise, and she wouldn't even stir. On Friday night, at 3 a.m., I got out of bed carefully. I used a safety filter to make a hole in the back of my neck. I couldn't avoid the feeling of the blood running, but I needed it. It was part of the plan. I dropped the pin, took 3 sleeping pills, and let myself drift into the darkness. I fell asleep quickly, and as I did, I reflected on the message I had sent again. I had calculated that I would be home within an hour, or maybe when the police arrived. An hour meant the plan hadn't worked. The police would mean I had succeeded. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and the voice on the other side made terror seize me. "It's Blake," he said, in a deep tone. "Mr. Foley, who is this?" "I'm Sergeant Willis. There was a shooting at your house. Your wife is unharmed, though very affected. Can you come home and comfort her?" "I'm on my way. I should be there in 10 minutes. It's not great when a plan comes to fruition." I arrived home to find the neighborhood filled with flashing lights, red and blue lights blinking through the windows. I made my way through the officers and entered the house. Liam stood up when he saw me, hugged me tightly, and began crying uncontrollably. The sound of his crying tore at my heart, but I remained firm. Detective Sampson sat across from us, watching as Liam continued crying and trembling, unable to calm down. "Mrs. Foley," the detective said, "the name of the intruder is Ray Estranzo. Do you know him?" The world crumbled around me. Liam collapsed in tears.
"Oh God, no. Oh hell, I'm so sorry, Blake. Oh God."
All I could do was hug her, though I knew nothing would be the same after that night. Detective Sampson looked at me with the intensity of a man seeking answers, as Liam tried to pull himself together. "I'll give you a minute to calm down," he said firmly. "Let's try this again. It seems you know Ray Estranzo. Is that true?" Liam, still trembling, whispered with a broken voice, "We went to high school together." At that moment, an officer touched the detective's shoulder, whispering something in his ear. Sampson nodded and got up, leaving the room for what felt like endless minutes. My mind raced, planning what could happen next, while cold sweat ran down my forehead. I tried to keep my expression as impassive as possible, though I couldn't stop a slight internal smile as I thought about the twist this was taking. When Sampson returned, his face showed renewed seriousness. "Mrs. Foley," he began, "I'm going to take you for questioning. Officer, please handcuff Liam." The cold atmosphere in the room intensified as he read his rights. "You have the right to remain silent." Confused, but trying to stay calm, he asked, "What's going on, detective?" "We found your cell phone," said the detective. "Your wife invited him over tonight. We need to do some investigating." The air grew thick as Liam, visibly terrified, screamed, "I didn't do that. Please, don't leave. I need you." But it was too late. I could do nothing but leave the house, my mind calculating what would come next. As the officers handcuffed her and took her away, Liam's words echoed in my mind. "Help me, Blake, please." There was no way I could save her. And I knew the clock was already ticking. The evidence on her phone, the message she sent to Ray Estranzo. It was only a matter of time before everything came to light. The police shut down the house, put up yellow tape, and I spent the night in a motel, avoiding any unnecessary contact. The next morning, after having a decaf coffee, I headed to the park. I thought about what was about to happen, the small knot of threads I now had to untangle. Liam, desperate, made her only possible call to her parents. But the detectives already had a search warrant and found the disposable phone. The trail was clear, messages and calls between them, secrets that couldn't be kept hidden much longer. Liam's future seemed sealed. My first move was to contact my lawyer and take the next step, file for divorce. I made sure everything was documented and in order. Liam would get 50%, but she wouldn't have to pay the legal fees, especially considering her attempted murder. With the joint account empty, I withdrew my part in cash, changed my payroll account, and made sure everything was secured. I hired professionals to clean the house and packed Liam's belongings, leaving them at her parents' house. The police tried to convince me that Liam was being manipulated, but the evidence didn't lie. The cell towers matched my version of events. Liam, apparently, broke down under pressure. At her trial, she tried to defend herself, saying she had been harassed, that her affair was the cause of all this. "I never sent that text," she insisted. "My husband must have known and framed me." But the truth couldn't be hidden. In the end, the press echoed her failed attempt at defense. Liam took a plea deal and was sentenced to 20 years. I didn't wait for the divorce to move on. As I'd always known, there were plenty of women willing to comfort the jilted husband. The game had changed, and I was ready to move on with my life, without looking back. Once Liam started serving her sentence, the assets I had managed to accumulate quickly ran out, especially as she fought for her freedom. Her situation was desperate. She was committed to nothing and no one, and although Ray tried to demand something, he soon realized there were no valuable assets left. It wasn't worth spending a fortune for a moral victory that would bring them nothing in the end. So the lawsuit never materialized, leaving both of them in an even more compromised position. This drama, though heartbreaking, made me reflect. If I were Blake, I would have left her long before she came back from the trip. I would have blocked her from everywhere, not giving her the chance to keep up with her lies. Sayonara, Liam, I would have said, but not with regret, but with the feeling that there was nothing more I could do to save her. Their fate was sealed. Although I can't help but recognize how meticulously Blake planned every step. From his first move to the last, everything was calculated. Failed sins. He left Liam in prison, with no money, no allies, trapped in her own web of lies. And Ray, well, he ended up paying the price for his betrayal, with an ear ripped off and a destroyed kidney. A perfect ending for a villain? Maybe. And what do you think of all this? Too much drama, revenge, and toxicity to digest? If you like these emotionally charged stories, with twists and a good dose of justice, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel, comment below what you think of all this, and maybe give some tips to improve. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it. And remember, if you want more videos with stories like this, just know that I post every day. See you tomorrow.